About a year ago, I purchased my first Broadway Limited Imports N-scale steam engine. At that time, I was planning to build a new N-scale layout, a rare discontinued Kibri layout form called the RADII, and I was looking forward to running some BLI locomotives on the completed layout. I had a large stock of Fleischmann N-scale track on hand to use on the layout and was about to start the construction when I realized that I'd better see how well the engine would run on the Fleischmann track before building the layout. So I made a loop of Fleischmann track, put a newly acquired BLI steam engine on it, and then turned on the transformer. The loco was okay on the straight tracks, but I heard a very faint rumbling sound. It seemed as if the driver wheels were slightly rubbing on where the rails were connected to the ties. A bigger problem was on the curves. The leading wheels kept derailing. What a bummer! I thought the engine could negotiate the R2 curved radii of the Fleischmann track, but I was wrong. The Fleischmann R2 radius is slightly under 9 inches, and the recommended minimum radius for the BLI N-scale engines is 9.75 inches. I didn't think the 3/4 of an inch would make such a difference, but it did. Now I had a twofold dilemma. First, the BLI locos would not run on the R2 curves by Fleischmann. Second, the Kibri layout that I had required R2 and R1 curved radii for both loops traversing the layout. It seemed as if either the BLI engines or the layout had to go. Then I remembered that Arnold years ago used to make N-scale track with a slightly higher height of the rails than the Fleischmann, and the rails had a rounded head that supposedly reduced derailments. Would switching to Arnold track solve the dilemma? I purchased a loop of Arnold track with R2 curves and tried out the BL engine on it. It ran smoothly with no problems. And what's fascinating about this is that the Arnold R2 curves are even tighter than the Fleischmann R2 curves, approximately 8.75 inches for the Arnold curves to 9 inches for the Fleischmann curves. Thus, I was able to run the BLI locos on curves a full inch tighter than the recommended minimum radius for the engines. In the video you see on the outer loop is a new BLI T4 484 steam locomotive running with no derailment issues. Note that every Kibri or Noch preformed layout I've built, and I think I've built and sold almost every one of them, requires R2 radii for the outer track loop. So, if you are planning on building one of these layouts and using BLI engines, you better test out your track first by putting your engine on an R2 loop before building your layout. There is a downside to the Arnold track. It is steel and has a higher electrical resistance than many other makers of N-scale track. Be sure to have multiple electrical hookups to your track to prevent slowing down of your trains. This is also likely going to cause issues with a digital layout. I have an analog layout and I use the BLI DC master units to access such digital features as the horn and the bell. Unfortunately, they only work sporadically with the Arnold track. I suspect that there will be similar problems with the Arnold track on purely digital layouts. Well, sometimes you just have to compromise in life. I love the design of the Kibri N-scale layout. It's the best laid out preformed layout I've ever seen. And I really like how the Arnold Brown tie track looks. Since I run an analog layout, it's no big deal for me not to access all the digital features of the BLI engines. And since the BLI locomotives have a dual mode decoder, the sound of the chuffing and the ancillary sounds of them running down the track are really good. Model railroading often involves compromises, such as space limitations, and you have to prioritize what is most important to you. Thanks for watching. Blessings.